Welcome to the Sexual Wellness Podcast, real life conversations with industry experts on modern sexuality and how to live a happy, healthy, turned on life. I'm your host, Laura Allen, founder of New Zealand's leading sexual wellness store and holistic sex, love, and life coach, passionately guiding women to expand their pleasure in and outside the bedroom. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sexual Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Allen. I'm a holistic sex coach guiding women to experience more pleasure in the bedroom and in all areas of their life. I'm a modern sex educator and a dance facilitation practitioner. And today I'm bringing to you a topic that is so dear to my heart because it's something that I will never stop learning about. Self-love is not something that we wake up with one day and just know how to do it. Self-love is a practice that we need to show up for every single day for the rest of our lives, and it's constantly growing and evolving and changing and challenging. And sometimes, in my personal experience, in the experience of my clients, and in the experience of pretty much every single person, man and woman, that I talk to, it is a constant learning, relearning, going down the path, falling off the wagon, going astray into the bush, and then realizing, oh, you know what, actually, I need to turn around and go back the other way. And this is the beauty and the dance of it all, because if we just woke up one day having acquired beautiful self-love tools and never really having to look at it ever again, then I feel like life just wouldn't be as exciting. So I'm going to be talking to you today about why self-love is integral for establishing a sense of self-trust and self-respect for ourselves, so that we can actually have safer and more intimacy in our relationships and in our sex lives. Because when we aren't actively engaging in our truest self-love practice, let me, word it like that, then what can happen is we can start to erode the sense of trust that we have with ourselves. And when that happens, that can erode our self-esteem, our self-worth, our trust, period. And from that place, it is really challenging to go out into the world and perform in integrity in our work. And it's really hard to go out there and be in relationship when we can't actually trust ourselves fully. And so, by implementing some tools and strategies that you can sort of constantly be coming back to enhance the sense of self-love and self-trust and self-respect and everything else, then that is going to deepen the intimacy and relationship that you have with yourself, and that is going to impact your sex life in a very radical way. A lot of the time when, clients come to me saying like, oh, I just want to feel something deeper in my sex. And, I want to have a deeper something. They don't want to have deeper sexual experiences. They want deeper intimacy. Really think about that for a while, because if you want to have better sex, it actually has nothing to do with the technique. What it is really about is about how you're feeling emotionally in relation to the person that you are engaging with. And, that connection and that relationship that you have with another person is so incredibly complex, like beyond our wildest dreams. But when we aren't showing up for our side of the street and take responsibility for our own mental hygiene and mental health, then that can create a lot of blockages within our own bodies, and that will literally act as a barricade to your pleasure and to your connection with the other person. So by continuing to practice self-love, which I know sounds so fucking ethereal, it's just like, okay, cool, like I need to love myself more. That's great. But like, what in the hell does that even mean? And how does one even begin to start, practicing this ethereal thing? Like, I totally get it. If you're listening to this and you're just like, cool, self-love, what the fuck? Like, I hear you. And we're going to be talking about it in this podcast. But when you do start to engage in it more, what you're doing is you are in integrity with yourself. And I am telling you, self-love is the biggest aphrodisiac on the market. The biggest. There is nothing more sexy and more seductive and more fulfilling and more rewarding and more sensual and just so deeply, ecstatically sensational for yourself than self-love. So I am just going to be going through a couple of points that I've put together about what I believe self-love is about. And these are only a few. Like, self-love is so broad and it means something unique to every single person out there. So if you're listening to this and if you've got something that you want to add, or if you've got a statement that you believe that self-love means for you, I would so love to hear from you. Like, share it with me, send me a DM on Instagram, that's _ Laura, Laura _ Ellen, ELLEN. Send me a DM, send me an email, write a comment or a review under this episode with your thoughts about self-love, because the more we can share about this topic, the more we can learn from and inspire others. Okay, so the first point that I wanted to bring up about self-love is that self-love is about keeping those little promises that you make to yourself. And, sometimes we get this idea that self-love is this, big, extravagant, act of service for ourselves, when actually it can be really small and really, really subtle things that we do for ourselves that add up to make a huge difference. So I'll give you an example. For me, one of the most meaningful acts of self-love that I practice with myself is having a hot lemon water in the morning. So simple, so easy to do. But by doing that every single morning, by making the promise that I'm going to do that every single morning, and then actually showing up and doing it every single morning, is like me telling myself that, I am going to keep promises to you. Like, I love you that much. And when you say that you want to do something, I'm going to show up and be there for you and do it. I'm going to follow through. I've got you, like that. So, it's about being mindful about how many of those promises you're making to yourself. I find a lot of the time, especially when you start getting into self-love and wellness and everything, we're like, oh my God, I've got all this stuff that I need to do. I promise that I'm going to meditate 3 times a day, every day. I'm going to do a 2-hour morning routine, and I'm going to scrape my tongue and dry body brush and all this other stuff and and set up these huge lists of expectations that we put on ourselves. And sometimes that can serve, and it's really beautiful to to experiment in that world of like, really going to town on all of the self-care stuff. But also another thing that self-love is about is like really taking a step back and understanding what is realistic for you and what really, really works for you, regardless of, what everyone's doing on social media and Instagram. Like now for me, self-love in my morning routine is about actually just blocking out a certain amount of time in the morning to do whatever really feels right for me. I used to meditate every morning for 20 minutes. And now I meditate in the afternoons or around lunchtime because, I don't even know why, but that just feels more right for me now. So it's about keeping those promises, but it's also about allowing yourself to take time to reflect and adjust when needed. Because holding yourself in really, really rigid routine can almost actually exacerbate and put more stress and pressure on you than you're really, really needing. So keeping those promises to yourself, but also really getting a firm grasp on what it is that you are truly, truly needing for your health and well-being. Okay, so the next point that I wanted to bring to you about self-love is asserting and holding boundaries. This is massive. Part of a female's arousal and part of our capacity to access more pleasure is our ability to feel safe, to surrender, and that is with ourselves and that is with a partner. So one of the first things that I will ask my clients is, what is your foreplay experience like with yourself? And so many of them say, I don't foreplay with myself ever, that's not a thing for me. And then even with their partners and in their relationships and their sexual relationships, it's a very similar story where it's like maybe it's like 2 to 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or completely non-existent. So yeah, it's about like creating a boundary so that you can feel safe to drop into those deeper states of arousal. And so one of those boundaries, I'm just using a sexual context here, for example, but one of those boundaries might be, it's just like, I am going to assert, at least 20 minutes of foreplay before any penetration, whether that be finger, my crystal wand dildo, or, whatever kind of device or human is you're playing with at the time. But then furthermore than that, it's actually about upholding that boundary. So when you are going into self-pleasure and you're starting to get aroused and you start to feel like, oh, I just want to get it over and done with, and, going straight for the finish line, you are not keeping that promise to yourself and you're not holding that boundary that you've made to yourself. And subconsciously, that is eroding your sense of trust within yourself. And what that will mean is that next time when you're in a sexual experience with someone else, because that self-trust and that, that those boundary muscles, they're starting to get a little bit weak. It's like when you stop going to the gym or when you stop working out, your body will change and you won't be as, strong, let's put it that way. And so when you stop upholding and asserting your own personal boundaries around what you need and desire, not only in the bedroom, but in all areas of your life, then that is going to affect how you show up in your relationships with other people. And this is why self-love is important, especially in the form of boundaries, because who you are in the bedroom and who you are with yourself is who you are with other people in all areas of your life. So it's about creating boundaries, saying no to things that you don't want to engage in. Like people pleasing is so 1950s. Like It is completely okay for you to put your wellness and your pleasure and your joy and your mental health at the top of the priority list. And it is completely okay for you to start incorporating ways into your life that are going to support and nourish you personally so that you can experience a new quality of life. And it's a practice. When you sort of are starting to work with boundaries and communication and starting to learn about self-love, I'm not going to lie to you, things are going to change. And it can be hard. Learning about self-love and really starting to transform yourself, transform your life, and actually putting the walking your talk and putting all of these ideas and philosophies into practice, you're going to change. Your environment's going to change. Your relationships are going to change. Your work is going to change. And you know what? It might feel really scary in the beginning. What no one told me about self-love when I first started getting into it is how lonely it would be. And I know that sounds kind of dark, but at the end of the day, when I was in it, because I was learning this new way of being that meant me standing up for my integrity when I hadn't before, and no longer it's not that I wasn't friends with my friends anymore, but what we were doing together no longer aligned with who I wanted to be. And so hanging out with them and going to the clubs and sleeping with people and, all of those old habits no longer served me anymore. And I knew that I didn't want to do them. And so it meant that I needed to stay at home by myself a lot because I was healing and learning, and I didn't yet have the boundaries that I needed to go out there and socialize and mingle. My boundary muscles weren't strong enough yet for me to go out and be in that environment and be safe. So I needed to be deep in that kind of in that cave mode, that that insulation mode. And that's a big part. That's a big part of this journey for a lot of people, not for everybody, but for a lot of people. It's this kind of insulation mode so that you can actually integrate everything that you're learning until you feel strong enough to go out there and actually integrate into the world and into new experiences. But you know what? Even though it was really, really hard, when you are truly in integrity and in alignment with your truth, you will know. And so you might feel lonely at home on a Saturday night, but you know with every single cell in your entire fucking body that you are on the right path, and nothing can change that, because you know. Your whole body is screaming at you, keep going. And that feels better than going to the club on a Saturday and having a random hookup, or whatever it is that you're doing that, is actually not what you want to be doing anymore. I think I rambled a little bit there, sorry, but I feel like you get the picture. Next point I want to move on to is self-love is about calling yourself out on your shit. It's about getting out of your own way. I'm not here to tell you guys in this episode that self-love is about bubble baths and manicures and living your best life. I'm here to give you the tough love on self-love, because this is the fucking reality about it. It's hard sometimes. It is actually not easy, and it takes so much courage and bravery and strength to walk your talk and actually live in alignment with yourself. Trust me, because self-love will make you do some crazy ass shit. Self-love will probably make you want to quit your job that you hate. Self-love might actually ask you to leave your boyfriend who, doesn't treat you well. Self-love is going to make you shed a lot of layers that you were comfortable in, even though you know deep down that they're not right. You know it. But self-love isn't going to let you ignore it anymore. When self-love comes calling, and when you start to engage with it and listen to it and trust it, that intuition, that calling, that whole full body knowing, when you actually start to live with that, yes, everything is going to change, and yes, your life is going to probably transform into a life beyond your wildest dreams, but it's going to mean that you're going to need to put some badass courage pants on, because you're going to need to be looking at all of your shit, and you're going to have to own up to it all. You can't hide anymore. You can't blame other people anymore. You can't be a victim anymore. You actually need to own everything. And you need to call yourself out on your own shit. When you make mistakes, you need to go, yeah, I made a mistake actually. That was not what I wanted to do. That was not right. That was not an integrity. I made a mistake. And we'll get to later in this episode about how to deal with those situations in a really loving way. But it's about calling yourself out on your own shit and getting the fuck out of your own way. Because so often we will come up with excuses, we will come up with all sorts of things under the sun to keep us stuck and small and lackluster and not turned on, and all of that stuff that I talk about in here. If you want to live a heart-ruled, pleasure-fueled, fucking turned on life, then you need to start acting from a place of intuition and integrity, and learning to put those courage pants on and make those hard decisions and own up to your shit. Look at your shadows. You need to be able to get really comfy in those spaces. Because as much as self-love is about rainbows and butterflies and living your #best life, it's also about looking at the flip side of that and understanding all of the patterns and all of the dark shit that you just actually do not want to look at, so that you can understand what you need to do to get to the butterflies and rainbows. Okay? Yeah, I know. Okay, so the next point is self-love is about saying no to harmful habits, even though they're so comfortable and so deeply ingrained. And, this is tying in with everything that we've already said, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But if you are drinking alcohol every single day, having a certain amount of drinks every night, or even, 4 or 5 times a week, I don't need to sit here and tell you the science behind that. I'm not here to tell you to stop drinking alcohol, okay? Because, I enjoy alcohol, and I use it for play and connection and community. And, sometimes even now, I sometimes get it wrong with alcohol still. But at the same time, it's self-love is about actually going, you know what? I'm not going to do this anymore, because I know with every single cell in my body that it doesn't want me to be consuming that much alcohol. I'm just using alcohol as an example here, but it can be so many things. Perhaps you are putting up with a job that is just completely depleting you, your energy, your self-esteem, everything. What are you willing to do to change that? Because you can quit your job. You can do anything. Can't is not a word. You either will or you won't. And it's up to you to decide when you're going to take responsibility for your happiness and for your relationship with yourself, and choose another path. Now, I'm not saying that if you've got, financial obligations and responsibilities to just quit your job, walk out tomorrow and have no financial plan behind you, because, that's also not necessarily coming from a place of love, because financial health is a total thing. But there is nothing stopping you from finding new ways to call in extra money. Perhaps it's like looking at a side hustle. Perhaps it's taking on some like part-time education so that you can find a new career path. Perhaps it's actually just going and working, in a cafe again part-time until you figure out the next thing. Or, there is always a way. Everything is figure-outable. That's a quote from Marie Forleo. She's amazing. Everything is figure-outable. So the more and the longer you keep yourself in this I can't victim mode, which is like something that self-love has zero fucking tolerance for, the longer you're just going to be eating away at your self-love, self-trust, self-respect. And so it's honestly about making those tough decisions, like I've already said, and actually taking action and saying no to those habits, even though they're so comfortable. I know it's so comfortable getting a salary every week. I know it's so comfortable to be in that relationship that you're unhappy in, even though you know you want to leave, but you don't want to. And I know it's comfortable. I know it's familiar, but you know that it's not right. And it's up to you to put those courage pants on and say no to those habits and start forming new ones that are actually going to bring you the joy and the pleasure and the life that you deserve. Okay, next point. Self-love is about mental health and choosing thought patterns that elevate you. So mental health is absolutely everything. Health and wellness starts between the ears. Sexuality starts between the ears. The first thing that I talk about with all of my clients and in my Queendom course, it's always about your pleasure mindset. What you believe is what you will achieve. Like sadness and grief, and I'm completely guilty of this. I'm not going to sit here and say that I've got this nailed because I haven't. But sadness and grief and, victimization and all of that kind of stuff, it's addictive, because what we've learned throughout our lives is that it will get us a certain type of love and attention that makes us feel comfortable, that makes us feel validated. And so it's really hard to let those things go when it's actually just been our coping strategy. And so it's about stepping out into the uncomfortable and being really vulnerable and being really brave and going, you know what? I'm going to choose a new narrative for myself and for my mental health. I'm not going to rely on being sad anymore to get the love and attention that I think I want. I want to choose joy and happiness and pleasure and, all those buzzwords. I want to choose that. I want to show up as that in my life. And I'm not saying that you need to be happy every single day, because it's completely ridiculous. And for those of you who follow me, know that I encourage you to celebrate your emotions all the time. But there's no need to stay stuck in sadness or let sadness, grief, depression, and all those things like completely run your life and run your day and run your story. Obviously, if you're going through a really traumatic period, then this is a completely different conversation. But I'm just talking about in the kind of everyday of life. Like humans, it's so easy to, fall into a familiar pattern of like feeling down on ourselves, looking for the negative things, like always kind of going for things that need to be healed or improved or bada. No. Choose to stay in that vibration of gratitude and appreciation. And I know it is so easy to stand in front of the mirror and look at the things that we don't like about ourselves. Like, I know it. Like, I personally am super fucking hot, and I still find things to like diss about my body, like so sneakily in the mirror. But I'm at a point now where I can just like, I hear it happening and I observe it and I catch it and I'm like, what? Nope. Get out of here, pal. That little dragon in my brain telling me some shit about my toenails or whatever, I'm just like, no, get out of town. Like, get out of here. There's no room for you. This is all, like, everything that is happening here is totally, totally awesome. And yeah. So, you've really got to learn how to catch those thoughts when they're in there. And a tool that that I learned a while ago is actually just to identify them, like give them a persona, like personify them. These negative thoughts, like perhaps they're like little dragons that run around in your brain, or perhaps there's actually like a little teddy bear on your right shoulder that is kind of your inner critic. And he sits there and he like whispers all of these like negative thoughts into your mind, and he's there. He's always going to be there. You know, they never go away. But it is up to you what you do with them. You can take a look at this teddy bear on your shoulder and just be like, hey pal, you know what? Thanks for the input, but why don't you just stay on my shoulder and be quiet? Like, I know you're there, but like, I'm not going to let you run the show today. I'm running the show today. And what you're saying is a bunch of bullshit. A classic Eckhart Tolle quote is, you are not your thoughts. And if you are running a dialogue that is negative and, you know, making you think negative things about your relationship, negative things about your body, negative things about all this kind of stuff, look, I know with every cell in my body that it can feel so real. But I also know that you have the power and the courage and the strength and the capability to, over time, change that story and believe and completely rewrite it to something new for you that is going to uplift you. It is possible. It is absolutely possible. If you're listening to this and if you're kind of dealing with perhaps something a bit more serious like depression or like severe anxiety and so on, then, you know, I know it's so much more complex than just saying think happy thoughts. I've been there, trust me. If you know my story, you know that I've definitely been there. There are so many tools and so many ways that we can heal our minds. But for this particular podcast, I just wanted to let you know that you have the power to choose a new narrative. And yeah, it's a process and it takes time, and just allow yourself to go through it fully. Okay, so next one is self-love is about putting your wellness and health at the top of your priorities. Okay, the top of your priorities. And look, this is constantly changing and evolving. Like going back to the beginning of this episode when I was talking about, you know, self-love sort of like coming back around in circles to like kick you in the ass and test you to see if you like are still on your self-love game. You know, because life happens. I get it. Life is always happening. And sometimes, you know, like perhaps you are starting a new family and that's actually taking up a lot of your energy, and you just haven't really been prioritizing your wellness as much as you would have before. And then all of a sudden you've gone too far off path and you reach a certain point, you're like, oh my God, I've actually been going in the wrong direction. I need to do that 180 now and come back to self. That's totally okay. That's what it is. It's a dance. But just know that you can choose yourself, and you can choose your happiness. You can choose your pleasure over and over and over again. And it's so easy to slip. It's so easy to fall off on that path. If you're someone who has codependent tendencies, which, you know what, like in this day and age, in this society that we've grown up in, it's like, it's who doesn't have some codependent tendencies? Seriously, it's like ingrained in our society. But what that means is that when you enter in relationship with other people, is that it's really hard to draw the line as to what's theirs and what's yours. And there's this kind of emotional enmeshment can happen, and it can be really hard to distinguish healthy boundaries in a relationship so that you're maintaining independence and you're establishing interdependence in relationship, where you are maintaining a sense of self-sovereignty. And what I'm saying exactly with this episode is like you're maintaining your self-love and your self-respect, and you're still upholding all of that within your relationship within yourself, while still maintaining a beautiful, loving connection within your relationship. And that is really freaking hard to do, people. It's hard. I mean, that's the secret. And it takes so much. And it also depends on, attachment styles, and god damn, it can get complex. I'm telling you, complex stuff. So yeah, self-love is about like really learning to strengthen those muscles, like, because you're always going to be tested. So it's like, say when you're alone, when you're at home alone, your self-love muscles are like Arnold Schwarzenegger muscles. But then all of a sudden you go out into a group dynamic and, you feel a little bit weaker, like you're kind of like not Arnold Schwarzenegger anymore. So that's the test, and that's your new gym to go to exercise and practice the tools that you've learned at home and integrate them into your relationships outside. And then perhaps you might be in a relationship currently, and that's another test for you to continue growing and learning how to assert those healthy boundaries and maintain your sense of self and stay grounded in your own love for yourself and your own relationship, and come from that place of overflow. Instead of getting caught up and swept away and taken off path and distracted by the others and all of the circumstances that are happening in your life. And I get it, like I've started a business, and that has consumed so much energy, and it's totally affected my self-care regime, and like it's affected how I show up for myself, because all of a sudden my energy isn't like, 80% going into my self-love and self-care regime. It's like 80% going into my business. And then all of a sudden I wake up, 8 months into being a business owner, and I'm like, oh my God, like, why do I feel so disconnected from source all of a sudden? Oh, it's because I've not been practicing what I preach, and I need to come back, do that 180 and get back on my self-love path, because, at the end of the day, that is what it's all about. It's a priority, and it's up to you to make it high on your list. Okay, so we're nearly there, guys. Only a couple of points left. I know this episode's a little bit longer. So the next one is self-love is looking after your inner child. So when you're getting triggered, when you're feeling like, ooh, scared, and all of that stuff is coming up, imagine a little girl or boy on the side of the road just like freaking out, no one in sight to look after them. Like, what would you do? How would you treat that child? Do the same for yourself. Like, oh my God, how is it possible that we are so fucking mean to ourselves? It blows my mind. Some of the things that I hear myself say to myself, or some of the dialogue that my clients tell me that they have there in their minds, it's like, wow, we would never even wish that on our worst enemy. Yet we say it and affirm it in our own minds all the time. So if you're feeling vulnerable, if you've made a mistake, if you if you're just like, lacking sleep and feeling a little more soft and tender to the world, like, look after yourself. Use it as an opportunity to mother yourself. Like, really just treat yourself like the guest of honor in your life. Treat yourself like you would treat a little child who's feeling upset and tender and something bad has happened to them. Treat yourself like, you are your greatest lover. Like, a big thing that I've been practicing this year that I want to share with you is like healing my relationship to, men and masculinity. And so this year I've been really allowing my inner man to treat me like a freaking queen, and it works so well. And so if I'm feeling tender or vulnerable and whatever, I'm like, how would I want my ideal man, like the king of my dreams, to treat me right now? And then I do that for myself. There's so many ways that you can look at this, and there's so many little analogies that you can use, but really what it comes down to is treat yourself with love and kindness when you're feeling good, but also treat yourself with love and kindness when you make mistakes and when you're feeling bad. That doesn't mean to say that you're making excuses for yourself and allowing this behavior to continue. You can still implement change, but it doesn't mean that you need to put yourself in prison for it. Practice loving compassion and kindness to yourself always. And talk to yourself like you would talk to another child. It's like, okay, so you did that, and yeah, I get it, all of that compassionate stuff, and then just be like, so how are we going to do things differently next time to avoid this feeling, and da 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 da. You know what I mean. Really, really look after yourself. And, this is the sexual wellness podcast, and I know I'm not talking a lot about sex per se in this episode, but this stuff is so freaking important for your sex life, because if you can't treat yourself in this way, then it will affect who you attract as a partner, and it just affects your entire freaking life. And so many of my clients are wanting to find, their king or their man, and they want him to be this, that, and everything. But really, they haven't done a lot of this stuff within themselves first. And I know it's cliche and it's so annoying when you hear it from people, but it's so freaking true. You've got to love yourself first. And it's a journey and it's a practice, and take your time with it, because it doesn't happen overnight. When you're starting to learn about boundaries, be like, hey guys, hey friends, I'm learning about boundaries. It's probably going to be really awkward and weird in the beginning, but please help me, because it's something that is really important to me. It's a process. And, like all meaningful pursuits in life, it's an acquired skill. So take it easy, go at your own pace, and accept and love yourself for where you're at right now. Don't expect to be all the way over there when really you're just here right now. It's okay. It is totally, totally okay. So just to wrap this up, it's self-love is about so much. I mean, this episode could go on for many, many hours, and self-love is something that I talk about in all aspects of my work. But it's about loving yourself when you say awkward things at parties. It's just it's just accepting yourself for who you are, and not putting outrageous pressure on yourself to change or be better or anything like that. It's about having trust in yourself and in the universe for, time and how it's all unfolding in perfect divine time and blah, 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 all that woo-woo stuff. It's woo-woo, but it's also true, guys. So yeah, I feel like I've talked enough. I hope that you got some good little snippets out of this, and you're feeling really motivated and inspired to love yourself like crazy. If you go onto my website, I've got the Sensual Living Workbook in there, and it's got some really awesome tangible self-love tools that you can you can print out this workbook, you can write in it, and it's actually everyday tools that you can use to actually implement more self-love and sensuality into your everyday life. So I totally recommend just jump onto my website. It's free and free. All you need to do is go into my website, www.laura, Laura, hyphen Ellen, ELLEN, so laura-ellen.com, and you'll see it there. The Sensual Living Workbook. Go and get it. You can also join my Facebook group. It's called the Pleasure Posse. So yeah, that's also totally free. Just come and jump online, and I do videos in there, and there's all sorts of juicy stuff in there. It is just for women. It's a women only space. How else can you find me? Just send me a DM on Instagram if you've got any questions. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode. And yeah, that's it from me. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back next week with another episode. If you enjoyed this episode, hit like and subscribe, or share it with someone who you feel could benefit from hearing it too. My mission is to bring healthy sexuality to the mainstream, so be sure to leave your 5-star review on your favorite podcasting app, because that way this content can land in the ears of those who need it the most. If you're looking for more resources on how to live a turned-on life, check out my website at www.laura-allen.com, where you'll find events, coursework, free downloadable workbooks, as well as my coaching packages. And lastly, I want to thank you for taking the time to prioritize yourself in this exquisite way, because when we do, that's when we can really start to show up for the rest of the world. And until next time, thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back with another episode soon.